Hey everybody, Dan from Keystone Wood Specialties here to talk to you about how to install our new floating shelves. Our floating shelves consist of two basic parts. You've got the inside frame, which is what you attach to the wall, and then you've got the outer shell, which is a combination of solid wood and veneered MDF, and that goes over top of the frame and attached to the frame. The first thing we're going to do is identify where our floating shelf is going to be installed. In this case, we're going to install it 26 inches above the countertop, and we're going to basically center it on the studs that we find. In order to find the studs, a lot of people like to use a stud finder. I personally do not like stud finders. I've kind of developed a different way to do it. I actually use earth magnets, and what they do is they're strong enough to read through the drywall or sheetrock and identify any place where there's a screw head. And if there's a screw head there, then that means that there is a stud there. So what I do is I'll go ahead and run the earth magnet over the wall until I can find a stud. So right there is one stud, and I've got another one here, and I'm gonna run that one over the wall as well. And there's another one. And generally the studs are 16 inches on center. I'm going to take a look here to measure. And this case is no different. They're about 16 inches on center. And we now know where our studs are. And we want to install this shelf 26 inches to the top of the shelf from the top of the countertop. And I'm going to actually make my markings at 25 3/4 so that you don't see my line when I install the frame, because that's going to tell me where the top of the frame is. So I'm going to go ahead and measure 25 3/4. And actually I can do that closer to where the studs are. Then I will just transfer my lines down. I'm also going to mark the center line. These studs are 16 inches. I'm going to make a mark here at 8 and mark that as the center line. And then when I hold my frame up and align the center line where it needs to go, I can see where I need to drill to hit the studs. So now I will drill the holes here for the screws. And the way that I was taught to install it is you want your screw to slip into the hole that you drill on this, because you want the screw to draw this to the stud. Some people undersize the hole here, and then the screw is threading into both the subframe and the stud, and it's not drawing them together. So I learned this 20 years ago, and it's worked for me very well. It's the way I recommend it. One other trick that I learned when installing floating shelves is I'm actually going to mark the bottom of the shelf, where that goes, and in line with where the studs are. Because when these shelves are loaded up, when someone puts something on them, there's going to be a certain amount of torque applied to the shelf. Torque is basically force times distance. And the more weight they put on the shelf, the more torque is put on that screw head, but also the more pressure is exerted on the drywall. And drywall is compactable, and it actually can dent that, which will cause your shelf to sag. So what I'm going to do to prevent that is I'm actually going to run 2 basic drywall screws in, and I'm going to screw them into the stud flush with the drywall. But because they're screwed into the stud, they're not going to compress. They're going to prevent that shelf from sagging over time. even if it's pressing into the drywall, this is going to prevent shelf sag over time. Now I'm gonna put my shelf on the lines here. Put my screw in. All right, and I've got my screw installed, my first one. And I don't recommend using basic drywall screws because, like we mentioned before, there is a certain amount of torque that's going to be exerted when these shelves are loaded up with weight. And some of the drywall screws can't handle that torque. I recommend cabinet screws. Depending on how big the shelf is, if you want stronger screws. And at this point, before I put my second screw in, I'm just going to make sure that I'm perfectly level, which it is. Now I will run my second screw in. Take my magnets off. And now, case goes right over top like that, and then you can either secure that with some pin nails from above so that they're not seen, and there you have your floating shelf.